Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations in the Den. Today our guest is Helen Grantham. Hi Helen.
Hi.
Um, and Helen has an illness that she will tell you the name of because God knows I know I'm going to get it wrong. Thrombosis 8.
Yes, it's
What is this called?
thrombophilia factor 8.
Oh, okay. And it's a blood clotting disorder.
That's right, yes.
Okay, and I guess my first question for you is how was this diagnosed?
Okay, so it started when I was 20. I had a very, very painful leg and I was quite breathless. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening. So I went off to hospital and even they couldn't find what was happening. And basically, after quite a long investigation, they found that I had a blood clot, but they didn't know why. And so they put me on medication to dissolve the blood clot.
So blood thinners?
That's right. And they took me off the blood thinners, saying,
yes,
"Oh, you'll be fine
now."
now."
On them for a short period of time.
That's right. It's usually about 6 months, something like that, that they keep you on. So I then had another blood clot 2 years later, and
where was this one?
Same leg. So, but I recognised the pain and the symptoms better this time. I recognised that something was wrong anyway. So I was back on the blood thinners, and then they took me off again, saying, "You'll be fine."
Now, when you say you're on blood thinners, are you talking about warfarin?
At the time, I was on warfarin. Yes. I'm on a different one now, but yes, it was warfarin. So, you know, somebody being in their 20s having to go off to the hospital for very regular blood tests and not being able to eat this, not being able to drink that, it was quite tough, actually.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So I then came off the blood thinners again. They said, "You'll be fine." And I had another blood clot, same leg. And by this time, I think I was 24, 25.
Okay.
So, and then I still didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody had said, "You're having blood clots because of this." There was no reason.
Okay, I understand.
So the doctors kept saying to me, "Well, you've been on warfarin now, you can come off, you'll be fine." And I had my last blood clot when I was 32, and it was a particularly large blood clot, which is obviously very dangerous. And
yes, they are.
At that point, I was told, "Right, you're going to stay on medication now," which was absolutely fine with me because it took away quite a.
You'd rather not have the blood clot.
Yes, exactly. And the anxiety.
I'm extremely interested in this topic because I've had blood clots since I was young. I had a TIA, a minor stroke, when I was 17. When I was 28, after the birth of my daughter, I had a blood clot that traveled from my calf into my lung. So I had a pulmonary embolism.
Okay.
And then at 46, I had a stroke from a blood clot that had traveled to my carotid artery. But when I went to the thrombosis specialist, they said I have nothing wrong with my blood. Now, I believe, and this is just me, I'm not a physician. I just think my concern is that if I had been on blood thinners or even an aspirin regimen, maybe I would not have had a stroke. But I'm not looking for a reason why I should not have had a stroke. I mean, at this point, I've accepted I had a stroke. It's been 5 years. So, but I mean, I'm just concerned because now my sister had a operation in her ankle and ended up having like coughing up a blood clot and she lives in England, and she ended up in the hospital. And when my physiotherapist had an operation on her ankle, and she was wearing the brace, I said to her, if you feel any breathing issues, please go to the hospital because of what my sister had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
She went to the hospital and they were sending her home and they said you were fine. I told her, no, you need to insist that they do some kind of testing. They did the testing. She ended up having a blood clot in her lung.
Right, okay.
So blood clots really travel, and it's very dangerous. This was 2 weeks before her wedding. Like she could have missed her wedding for crying out loud. And so I was very angry about it because I don't understand why they don't test more deeply. They don't go do a more deep, thorough, I guess, investigation
Mm.
of clots.
Yes, that does surprise me. But first of all, Maria, I just want to say I'm so sorry to hear that you've had to go through all of that, because that's really quite traumatic. So, you know, you've done so well to get where you have, basically going through all that.
It's life, you know. I mean, there's nothing I could have done to have changed what happened. I just wish that these physicians would go a little deeper. I
Mm.
mean, I don't understand. Like, I mean, if I can't imagine that my sister and my physiotherapist are the only two people who've ever had um, operations on their ankles that have worn casts or whatever that have had um, blood clots travel from them.
That's right. Yes, and
So why do they not do a more thorough investigation because of these things? This is what I don't understand.
no, I one of the things I do out of work, I volunteer for a charity which raises awareness of blood clotting. And that charity tries to get the message out to pretty much everybody, not just healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses, etc.,
Okay.
but everybody, to say blood clotting affects anybody at any time.
Yes.
And it's really dangerous. More people die of blood clots in a year than that die of breast cancer.
And
So
these are the
it,
things that we need to be aware of because people are not aware of these things. I remember going to my doctor and just having a conversation with him about the blood clots that I'd had, and he said, "Have a glass of red wine with dinner, Maria."
wow.
You know, and I said, I said, I'm going to turn into an alcoholic. Like, I mean, that was his suggestion. He never said, Maria, you need to maybe be on a blood thinner. Maria, maybe you should be on an aspirin regimen. He
Mm,
never gave me any other. That was his only discussion with me. And then
wow.
when I was feeling the numbness in my jaw from the stroke, I was in my office. I work for at a university, and I was in my office and I felt the numbness in my jaw. Now I didn't have facial distortion, but I had numbness. I felt like I had been to the dentist, you know, when they freeze you.
Hmm.
And I called the office and I went into the doctor's office and he told me I was having a tension headache and told me to go home and get some rest. And I woke up I woke up in the middle of the night vomiting, and then the next morning woke up, fell to the ground, had had a stroke in my sleep.
Wow, Maria, you're so lucky that
Oh, I
you
know.
got
Believe
through
me,
that.
I always say I thank God that I'm so blessed because
Mm.
I mean the amount of people that don't wake up, and I woke up like I could have not been here today, and then I
That's
was on the floor for 6 hours because my daughter left. She was running late for school. She left the house without saying goodbye. So I was laying on the floor,
I love
and
that.
she didn't come upstairs to my room because normally we're downstairs. We have breakfast together before she leaves in the morning. And I don't know why, for some reason, she just was listening to her music and eating her breakfast, and then she left.
Mhm.
And my boss had called her and said, I work for the vice president of the university, the assistant vice president, and the chief financial officer.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows me for 8 years. I've worked with her, and she knew Maria does not show up to work. And so she called my daughter's school, and that's how I was. My daughter came home, and that's how she found me on the floor. But anyways,
Wow.
back to you. We're not here to talk about me. So what I want to know is, you said your mother also had a blood clot.
Yes, unfortunately, she had one about 2 months ago, and again, it was out of the blue. And so she's recovering well, but she's in her 80s, so it probably
Wow.
takes a bit more time to recover
Yes,
than
absolutely.
when I had to recover in my 20s and 30s. Probably takes a little bit longer in your 80s. So she's doing really well, but it was a shock. It was a shock to all of them.
Yeah. Now, can I
And
ask another question?
sure.
When you're giving blood, if they have to take a blood sample, do
Hmm.
you have difficulty giving blood?
I generally don't, no.
No? Oh, you're fortunate.
Because I've had lots and lots of blood tests over the years, I have veins which stand out quite well.
Your body
So
just says,
I'm
give
so
it up.
used to it. Yeah,
Give it up or they're going to poke you again.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have an issue with giving blood. So, when I go, they tend to, and I've been told by a doctor that they're not supposed to poke you more than twice. But
Oh,
I've had to have heaters put on me, um, to try to bring my blood up. Um, they tie, the band really tight.
mhm.
They're slapping, slapping, slapping. They're trying to wake up my veins. And they tend to have to poke me more than once, and a lot of times they end up having to get the blood from the back of my hand, which is extremely painful.
Ow,
Yeah,
ouch.
very painful.
Yes, I'm
And
sure that's, oh, ow.
yeah, sorry, but when I go and I tell them you have to use the butterfly needle, they don't want to use the butterfly needle. For some reason, these nurses want to use the big needle. I don't know if it makes them feel more professional. I don't know what it is. And I try to explain to them, I know my body because I had a blood clot in my lung and I was in the hospital I was on blood thinners for 2 months and I
Mm,
was in the hospital for a couple of weeks.
mm.
So I was poked and poked. When I came out of there, I swear I looked like a heroin addict.
Oh,
So so I'm very aware that they have to use the butterfly needle, but they, for some reason, refuse to do it. And so it tends to be, one person doing it, and then they try to hand it off to the next person, and they try to hand it off to the next person, until finally somebody just gets the butterfly needle, and finally I can give blood.
mm, that sounds quite painful and difficult. I have
Well,
heard actually, if you drink a lot of water before you have a blood test, it helps. That's what I've heard.
yeah, I do. Yeah. So okay, so how does this? How does other than having clots?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Maria.
I said, other than having blood clots, how does this disorder affect you?
Um, it took me a long time to get over it, especially each blood clot seemed to be worse. And the last one seemed to affect me more than anything. I don't know whether it was that I was that much older, being in my 30s.
Do you mean painful? Are you talking about pain?
Pain and sort of rehabilitation and getting
Yeah.
over the anxiety.
Oh yes,
Um,
absolutely yes.
yeah,
Understand.
because the mental thing for me was probably half the battle, actually.
Yes.
Getting through the oh my goodness, I
You're
nearly
gonna have
died.
another one.
Yeah, and having that anxiety, could this happen again? And each time you had a pain in, I had a pain in my body, I just thought, oh no, it's happening again. So it was getting over that anxious feeling about it could happen at any time.
Yes, Absolutely,
And
I understand that.
but I had to learn to trust in the medication that I take. Um,
Okay.
so and
Now,
quite re
have you also had any dietary changes?
I when I was on warfarin, I had to adhere to a diet which excluded lots of green vegetables and green things because there's too much factor. I think vitamin K in there. So basically, that would make the warfarin just go through my body too quickly.
Okay.
So I had to adhere to that, and obviously watch things like alcohol as well because that can make
Oh.
your blood. Yeah, so the red wine thing, you drink too much of that, and you could be real problems. But I switched to a newer drug last year, and I've been on it now for just over a year. And quite honestly, I wish I'd done it a long time ago because I feel so much better on
Well, I
this
think
new
that
drug.
the medication, just like technology, like they keep updating and updating, and things shift and change, and so that medication was likely not available at that time.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what there was a lot of technology not available in my 20s, which I kind of wished that I'd had then. So, but it wasn't to be. But the new drug that I have, it's kind of cured a few things for me in that I don't feel as fatigued anymore.
Okay, well that's good.
So yeah, and I used to suffer very badly from the cold, and that immediately as soon as I came off warfarin and I went on to this other drug that I'm on, which is a apixaban, that that changed for me as well immediately. So I just don't feel unwell on it, whereas on
Okay, well that's
warfarin I did feel generally quite unwell, to be quite honest.
okay. So I understand that you have a business, a wellness business.
That's right. Yes, I'm a coach and I specialize in coaching people with chronic illness. So that can be any illness, and typically it's somebody who's suffered that illness for a fairly long time. So what I do is I help them confront and accept their condition, and we look at new strategies and look at new possibilities and just try and get that sort of life a bit more exciting for them so that they don't feel as though they are
Absolutely,
suffering.
yes, I understand.
And I kind of wanted to do that because I've been there myself. I've been in
Yes.
that dark hole where it was miserable and
Yes.
anxious. And what I have now is I grab life with both hands. And
Oh gosh, you and
I,
I could be twins.
Mhm.
I I started an entertainment business for accessible venues after I had the stroke because I was home a lot. I was used to having a social life, and I found the isolation was making me depressed.
Mhm.
So I started an event planning business where I planned events in venues that were accessible so that people could bring me out to events. I planned the events for me. No, I wanted just not just for me. Obviously, I wanted people who were in my position
Mhm.
to be able to socialize and interact with their family and their friends outside of their homes. And so I started an accessible event management group, and I started planning events, comedy shows, concerts, poetry shows, different things that people might have interest in, so that they could have some joy. Because you're
I
going through
love
this
that.
challenging thing, and it's so mentally exhausting because you are afraid and you
Mm.
are concerned, and people kept saying to me, oh yeah, my uncle had 3 strokes, my uncle had 4 strokes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I refuse to have another stroke.
Mm.
And so having a little bit of joy, I found
Yeah.
it really helped me. And so I don't know if as part of your wellness business, if you do events or things that kind of get people out of the thought process of, I could die anytime. I mean, we all know we could die anytime,
That's right.
but
But we have to
that's
sort
something you
of,
want to think about every day.
exactly, we can't fixate on when we're going to die, because it is a reality. And so, but we have to grab life with both hands, like I said before. I've
Yeah.
loved the fact that you've got the determination and to do the entertainments that are so inclusive, because getting a bit of joy back into people's lives who have
Yes.
suffered something is so important. It's so important that people are able to relax and use that sort of to feel more themselves again. So I love what you're doing
Oh,
there.
thank you. So what is your business? What do you do with your business? Do you just is it conversations? Is it coaching? I'm not sure.
It's mainly coaching. So I do one-to-one, and
Oh, okay.
I offer a program to see somebody through their journey, and that's very personally tailored, because all our journeys are so personal that I
Oh,
can't just do
absolutely.
a one size fits all. It's got to be
Oh no.
very, very personal.
Every illness. Two people could have the exact same thing, and it's completely different how it affects them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I try to do is make it that okay, make
Yeah.
their reactions and how they feel okay, because however you feel about your illness, that's okay, and then
Yeah.
that's where we start from. So that's what I try to do. I also run a Facebook group, which is very new. It's literally only weeks old,
Okay.
and
What's that
it
called?
it's called Positivity for a Healthy Mind and Body.
I
And
think
what
a
I'm
lot
trying
of
to do
people
is
could use
get,
that right now.
yes, they could, yes. I mean, it's open to anybody, absolutely anybody. But what I'm trying to do is just get us all to get a little bit more positivity every day, because
Oh boy. Well, the first thing that I did was I stopped watching the news.
yeah, I don't blame you. Quite honestly, there
I
is no
know,
good
it's
news.
just too much. Like
Yeah.
I just, every day you're hearing a story about this. I mean, being a black woman, hearing about the Black Lives Matter stuff. Then you got to hear about these people, everybody getting shot and killed in America, in the United States. Um, you have friends dying, not not from not from gunshots, but from different illnesses. Then you have the COVID, and then people, worrying about family members who live abroad, and because I have family members in Belgium, I have family members in England. So you worry about everybody.
Yeah, exactly. When you put the news on, it's all about, it's all about the bad news. You don't get the
Yes.
good news.
Oh,
So
there's no celebration on there. No, no,
there's
no.
no, we have to make our own celebration. So
Yes.
so for instance, in my group today, I put, what positive change have you made in your life over the past few months? And
Mhm.
I'm trying to get a discussion together about positivity. So
Yes.
my positive thing was, over the past few months, especially when we were locked down here in the UK,
Mhm.
I started regularly exercising, and
Okay.
I now do regular exercise maybe 5 or 6 times a week.
Okay.
And
Now, Helen, I'm gonna ask you, when you left the hospital, did they not tell you? Did they ask you about your exercise? Because I remember them telling me that I had to in order to keep my blood warm, that I needed to exercise every day. So I used to bring my daughter in her carrier to the gym, and I would, I mean, at the time I just lived down the street from the Y, so I would go to the Y and I would do an exercise class and have her in the carrier. Um,
Mhm.
because it keeps your blood warm, and I guess it prevents the clotting.
Yes, that's a good piece of advice. When I first clotted when I was 20, I was given none of that advice at all. And in fact, they kept me in bed for a whole week and I wasn't allowed to get out of bed. So
Oh Lord, they were
that's
setting you up,
terrible.
girl.
I know. I mean, again, I'm so glad that I'm here to tell the tale because
Oh,
that was
absolutely.
totally the wrong thing to do. And the same happened to me with my second and third clots. And it was only on my last clot that I was told I was just in hospital for the day, given the medication again, and told to go away and keep moving. So, but it's amazing how things change in a fairly short space of time. So, yes, the answer to that is I wasn't at first told to move, but then I was, and I've now taken it unto myself to
Oh,
make sure that I
absolutely.
am healthy.
Yes. Yes. Just movement. And it doesn't have to be a workout. Just movement,
They
walking,
ignored my warning when it was
you
420.
know,
So,
doing
friend,
things that keep your um I mean, ideally to keep your heart
they'll
rate,
go get me a
that
drink,
would be the
and I'll
best
be
thing.
like, "Thanks, friend."
But um if you're not in a position or in a place where you can
Oh
do
wow.
that kind of a workout, um, you know, like I have a vibration machine. I mean a vibration
Yeah.
machine I stand on
Oh, right.
that I
Yes. Yeah.
use every day
Yeah.
and I also do physio every day. I'm very fortunate that my job um, benefits include unlimited physio. So
Don't
I do physio
ever on the
5 times a
area.
week, and I make
Oh,
sure
that's
I'm on
great.
The one
vibration
that I
at
was
least three
telling you
times
about
a
the blood
day.
clot thing.
Mm.
So I'm doing everything
Oh,
that I can possibly think to do
I just been
to
walking around.
prevent myself from getting clots
I haven't read them
and
in
things of that
shrimp.
nature.
Yeah. I think.
I'm also on an aspirin regimen. Like I take
Well, I
an
see
aspirin
all of
every day.
so that kind of thing.
Mm, that's good. So you're doing the prevention, really, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And that's great to keep yourself moving and taking something as well. Just and I suppose that gives you peace of mind.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah. So I
Now, do
I now
any of your siblings? Do you have siblings?
yes, I do. I have one sister who's older than me.
Okay, now does she? You had to throw that part in there, right?
She'll
Because
kill
I
me for
didn't know
that.
that. And so, do any of them have clotting issues?
But there's also a
No, she's never had a clotting issue. So that's when we were quite surprised that my mum had one because apart from me,
Okay.
then nobody else in the family has had a clotting issue.
I see that. I'm like, ooh.
So,
Okay.
but no, my sister has is very healthy and has never had any clotting issues at all, and she has a son. So, she was able to have a son without any issues afterwards or before that, for that matter.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I
Your
actually
daughter's an
spoke to
option
my
too.
daughters. I have two daughters. One is 31 and one is 22. And I
Mhm.
spoke to them about birth control because, birth control can cause clots and strokes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And so I
absolutely.
spoke to them about that.
What about the
I spoke to
vodka,
them about
Red
all
Bull
of those
vodka
things because I
secret?
want them to take every
Oh my god.
preventative measure
Maybe so
to make
well.
sure that
Mm.
they don't have these issues. Because
Yeah,
if it could happen to
What
me,
are the
they always ask you if it's in your family anyways, right?
that's right. Yes, it's really important to bring these things up about things like birth control and smoking, which both of which can cause blood clots. So,
Yes.
I know that some people are embarrassed talking about things like birth control, but it has to be brought up, especially if you've had a clotting in your family, it has to be talked about.
okay, then
Yes.
get the milkshake and the olive.
Yeah. Oh,
Are you
absolutely.
doing a
I'm
nappy?
not trying to talk about anything with my children.
Hold on, definitely
I
doing
mean, they're
That's
no
olive.
longer
great.
children anyway. They're grown women. So, I have to discuss things with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, awareness is the key. You know, if everybody
You know, when a
sort
British
of
person keeps saying again,
thinks
like
about blood clotting, that it could harm them,
anyway,
then we're going to get more awareness in the world, because it can
Absolutely.
happen to anybody at any time.
Yes.
okay.
There are so many things. This is what this program is about. The reason why I started this podcast, obviously I couldn't do events during COVID, and I wanted people to have awareness. I want people to know about things that are going
Baking on my back garden
on.
and doing chocolate
I
too.
mean, I'm 51 years old. I have friends who have all kinds of ailments. You know, they have high blood pressure, they have this, they have high cholesterol. I mean, I thought I was a healthy person. I was working out, I was fine, I was great, and then I had a stroke. So at that point, I realized anything can happen to anybody. And so,
Yeah.
in the beginning, I was very angry because I thought, I have friends that smoke and drink and all of this, and yet they're fine. And I was angry because I'm like, here I am taking care of my body, eating properly, all of these things, and yet I'm the one that has a stroke. And everybody was shocked.
It seems very unjust, doesn't it? It seems really, really unfair.
So you have a moment of, you go through, the stages, the grieving stages. You go through the anger. I
Mm,
never went through denial. I accepted that I'd had the stroke. I just knew that I was not going to have another one. And so I
mhm.
was going to do whatever it took not to have another one.
Yeah.
So if it takes me working out every day, if takes me getting on the vibration machine every day, 3 times, you
Mm,
know, but I did not want to be on a blood thinner for the rest of my life.
mm. Yeah. I mean,
For some reason, I thought, that seemed so. When we were discussing that in the hospital, that seemed so like extreme to me.
mm, mm. Well, I'm glad
Now
to.
I'm thinking, maybe you should have took the blood thinners for the rest of your life. At least you would know you're not gonna have another stroke.
Well, I don't want to scare you, Maria, and it's obviously your choice. But I'm glad to see that you're healthy on what you do. So keep doing it because it's working for you.
Yes. Now I did see a thrombosis specialist,
Mhm.
and they said that they did not see any issues with my blood. But
Right.
I'm not naive enough to believe that everything the doctor says is correct.
Mm.
Because I have had too many experiences in life at this point.
That's right, and it should be shared decision making as well. That's another thing that we try to get the message out, is that you should be able to go and have this collaborative conversation with a doctor and say, well, I have anxiety about blood clotting, and therefore, what are my options, and make that shared decision together. So, but unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen,
No.
and people are forced to go down one route or another route,
Yes.
and maybe it doesn't work for them.
Now you're in the UK. We're in Canada.
Mhm.
Um, it took me to see a neurologist. It took me 18 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
I was waiting and waiting. It's a very challenging system we have.
Mm,
We have, yes, universal health care,
mhm.
and that's wonderful. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not sure our doctors really are as thoroughly trained as they need to be on issues that are happening every day to people.
That's right. And the thing about blood clotting is that it's not very sexy. It doesn't capture the sort of, it doesn't have that sex appeal, does it? That, you know,
Well, the one thing I remember, speaking of sexy, is Venus Williams when she had her daughter.
Mhm,
She had a pain in her calf,
mhm,
and they were wheeling her out of the hospital, and she said, "No, I want to check."
mhm.
And she forced them. She refused to leave the hospital until they had given her a CT scan, and when they did, they found that she had a clot because she knew she had DVTs.
Mm. Yeah, thank goodness she insisted.
Exactly, and she ended up having a blood clot in her lung,
Right,
and
yes.
so that saved her life. Her insistence saved her life.
Yeah.
Now, what bothers me is, come on, how many women have had blood clots after childbirth?
Mm.
Like, and if you have a pain in your calf or, things of that nature, should they not just automatically check? But they don't want to automatically check. For some reason, they want to wait until it gets to a severe state,
Mm.
almost fatal, before they will actually do a check on you.
This is the problem, that when you're in one department, say you've just given birth, that department just wants to get you out of their department, and they're not interested in, maybe having a pain in your leg. So unfortunately, this is where it falls down a bit. So
Yeah, because I mean, they want to stick you in a wheelchair and just wheel you out.
that's right. Yes. Yes.
And
So
then when you have a blood clot in your lung, now they gotta call an ambulance and get you back to the hospital, and and if you even can make it, because you could die in your sleep.
Actually, Mark would do that all the time.
Because what I was told after the blood clot that I had with my daughter was that if I had gone to sleep that night,
Is it everyone's first drink of the day?
I could have traveled to my brain and I could have died. But I didn't even, I was in my 20s. I was 28. I wasn't thinking about all of that. I just wanted to get out of the hospital. I wanted to be with my baby, and I wanted to, so I just chose to go home, take the medication, go to the gym, and do those kind of things. But it's very scary.
it is, and this is where we can do the thing about getting awareness out to everybody, so that if there is a young girl who's had a child, but then that they just don't know what's happening to them, somebody else might be able to recognize their symptoms and then get them to the hospital.
Right.
So
Well, it's like, when you hear all these symptoms, when they speak about, for example, the symptoms of stroke,
Yeah.
I had none of those symptoms. When I had the stroke, I had the numbness in my jaw, no facial distortion, which is what they speak about. I was not slurring. I was speaking to all my coworkers. We were all getting in the elevator, getting ready to go home. And I was not slurring my words. Otherwise, they would have looked at me and thought, "What's up with Maria?"
yeah.
Oh my God.
Nothing. And so, naively, everybody just went about their business,
I don't know.
because we had no idea. I did not have any of those symptoms.
Because again, like we've said a bit earlier, everybody's experience is very different,
Yes,
and so it's unique, isn't it?
absolutely.
No, but literally, I could like jump.
The best we can do is try to take the best care of ourselves. Be very aware of your body. But
Yes.
if you feel pain that you want to get it checked out, because you want to make sure you know what's wrong.
Make that bad joke.
That's right. Yeah, I think, like you said, we all need to be aware of our own bodies, and if there is something just a little bit not right, get it checked out. Don't take the risk. It's not worth it. Life is too precious.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No. You picked the wrong They're done. They're done.
Yeah, no, it's very.
No, they're not.
I
didn't think so. Take it over to
friends,
I need to go, because then everyone else tonight's gonna be mad.
Friends who have MS. I have friends who have scoliosis or whatever. Yeah, scoliosis. My niece.
Bye, Gabby. Thanks for leaving me.
And then we have the just the odd things. Car accidents. People have traumatic brain injuries because they went through through the windshield. of their
Yeah.
car. You know, like, I mean,
How
anything
are we
can
now
happen in
talking
life.
about windshield and
You know, it's absolutely ludicrous. But
Yeah.
what can we do other than be very aware of your body, um, be very clear with your physicians, and you have to fight for your life in the hospital.
You
Like,
do.
you have to. You cannot just let them say you're fine, go home.
No, you have to question things all the
They
time.
told me I had a
So
TIA. Now, did I know what a TIA was? No, my mother didn't know what a TIA was. My mother's not a nurse,
mm,
and so they just sent me home.
yeah. So like you said, you know, if we question things ourselves and we look after, we make sure that we're fighting for ourselves. Fight
Yes.
your own corner, basically.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
needs to do it.
You know, when when I worked at the University of Windsor, I lived in Windsor, and I remember going to the doctors, and I had a Chinese doctor, and he would say to me, "Stop self-diagnosing." And so every time I went into his office, he would take his medical books out, and he would let me read. So really, I was doing the work for him, because he was tired of me constantly going on WebMD and all the things that I was doing. But
We
I
all
was
do
afraid
it.
for my life. I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we all do it
You
though.
know, now we have Google. Yes. Now we have Google, so we can Google things. Now we have telehealth. You know, we have different technology now that we can use. Um, but we also have a little bit more awareness. And that is what we want, is awareness. We
That's right.
want people to
Yeah.
have awareness that things can happen. We want them to know the warning signs, the symptoms, so they
Hmm.
can know. You know, if I have a pain in my calf, should I go get it checked out? Make sure that it's not a blood clot.
Mm.
You
Yes,
know,
you're right.
this is what
Awareness
we want
saves
people to
lives.
do. Because if you don't go and fight for yourself, like I always say to Nicole, you know, she has a little baby now. And I'm like, you know, it was 2 before her wedding, and she was in the hospital fighting for her life with this blood clot in her lung.
Mm.
And she could have not gotten married. She could have wasted all her money. She could have not had her son right now. You know, but I said to her, you are not leaving that hospital until they check you.
Mm. Yeah, good.
So you have to fight for that, because they just did not, they just wanted to send her home. No, you're fine. They
Mm.
told her she was fine. She went home and she went back, because she called me and I said, get back there,
Mm.
because you have a wedding in 2 weeks. Do you want to make it to your wedding? And so she went back to the hospital, and they admitted her and gave her the lung scan, and that's when they found out that she had the blood clot in her lung.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's great. You probably saved her life, so that, you know, that's fantastic, and that's what we all need to do. It's kind of all of our duties to look after each other, look after ourselves, and be aware.
Very much so. But we have to fight, because unfortunately, and I don't think we should have to fight. Really and truly, I think that that they need to go a little deeper.
Mm.
I really truly believe that, because if this has happened once, it's happened twice.
Mm.
It's not a one-time thing. You're not the only person in the world who ever had a blood clot. You know,
Mm.
um, I'm not the only person in the world who ever had a DVT after childbirth.
Mm.
So why are they not digging deeper? That frustrates me so much, because you know how many women have died in childbirth. In fact, my
Mm.
great grandmother died in childbirth. Now, who's to say that it wasn't a blood clot? You know, I mean, you have to, they have to take it a little bit more seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I will continue my campaign for awareness. That's my passion. One of my passions in life anyway is to,
Yes, it does become your passion. It does become your
yeah.
passion.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
you know, because you know what you have been through. and you don't want other people to have to go through what you have been through.
That's right. Yes. I don't want it at all. And, you know, if it has to happen, then we get them seen to ASAP. So, yeah, I think, you know, I'm just going to carry on what I'm doing basically is spreading
So can you tell
the
me the
word.
name again of your disorder?
It's thrombophilia factor 8.
Thrombophilia factor 8.
That's right.
Okay. Um, so if you're having clotting issues, um, you can contact Helen at her sorry, what is your Facebook page again?
So my Facebook, they can get me just under my name, Helen Grantham, on Facebook or LinkedIn. And if anybody would like to join the Positivity for Healthy Body and Mind, it's that's also on Facebook. So come and join us there, and we'll all just lighten the world a bit
Wonderful.
together.
Yes. Share information. Sharing information is very important right now. I mean, we are seeing what's happening in the world. I mean, can you imagine over how many millions of people have died in 2020
Mm.
because of COVID-19? And then there's thrombophilia 8, and then there's strokes, and then there's brain aneurysms, and then there's cancer, and then there's MS, and then there's, I mean, there's so many things,
Yeah,
and so we all have to stay very aware, and we have to really take care of ourselves and really investigate when things are happening to us.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. I,
We have this habit of saying, oh, I'm okay, but we're not okay, and we need to get it checked out.
yeah, absolutely. So,
Anyways, Helen, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
and
I don't
you,
even know what time it is where you are.
it's 10 to 10 at night.
Wow.
So I shall be going to bed soon.
Yeah,
We
I imagine
appreciate you,
so.
Helen.
Yes,
We
it was
really
wonderful
appreciate you.
speaking with you. And I will be joining your Facebook page, and I will speak to you again.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to see you on the
You take care
Facebook
of
page.
yourself.
You too, you too. It's lovely to speak to you, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing the information. We could have saved some lives today.
Yes, we will. Yes, together we will, Maria.
Yes. Okay. Well, you take care.
You too. Thanks again.
Okay. Bye bye.